Hey everybody, today is May 15th, 2026, and you're listening to the While We Still Can podcast. Welcome back. Today, our friend Ed is back. Thank you for coming on. We wanted to talk about all these legal shenanigans, and in the worst way. So we were just discussing before we pressed record about the Supreme Court, and it's atrocious what they're doing. So can you please review with us the latest on and how you feel about it?
Well, I think that for years I've given the Supreme Court the benefit of the doubt in the sense that none of them are stupid people. But I think that they're ignoring the law that's been before them, and to eviscerate the Voting Rights Act and essentially say that you can gerrymander any way you want to on a political basis uh, to disenfranchise minority people. But if you did it on a racial basis, that would be wrong. But if you do it under the guise of a political basis, that's right. So what they're clearly saying is that you can find a way to do it and justify it and disenfranchise large groups of people from their voting. So that it started with Texas, and I think that it demonstrates to me, both on the court basis as well as on the number of states basis, that they have no faith in the American people, that they're willing to make decisions as they see fit. But I think the broader question is as we've seen this go on, is starting with the Dobbs decision and coming forward to the decision most recently on voting rights, is whether or not the Supreme Court needs to be changed in a number of ways.
Absolutely.
I think clearly, if you look at Justice Thomas, and as I understand what I've read about Justice Roberts, there are very, very serious ethical questions that have been raised with respect to both of those justices.
Can we review those real quick?
Well,
Because a lot of people might not have been paying attention to that.
with Roberts, and I've read it, I understand there's been a submission to the District of Columbia Bar Association, and I'll come back to that in a minute, that has accused him of ethical violations because, as I understand it, they're supposed to report outside income for themselves and their spouses, and his wife had taken in something like $10 or $11 million from getting, hiring lawyers into law firms, and this was never reported. And if it wasn't reported, it wasn't reported in the right way, and that petition's been filed in front of the District of Columbia Bar Association. Justice Thomas, this goes back for years and years, where he's accepted trips, he's gone on speaking tours, he's had a $270,000 loan forgiven on a mobile home that he had purchased.
Yeah.
And
the name Harlan Crow comes to mind. Is
and
that correct?
And a lot of it's with Crow, and it's gone on, and that's just and his wife gets huge sums of money for lobbying, and she's clearly, as she demonstrated, extremely right wing in the sense of MAGA right wing, election denier, and this is not the look for the Supreme Court. If you go back before you guys were born, Justice Fortas resigned from the Supreme Court. I think it was over a stock transaction of $25,000 of some relatively small.
That seems quaint at this point.
Yeah, that'd be cute. I would love that at this point. Yeah.
And he did it because the Supreme Court is too important. The old expression is, you have to be more pure than Caesar's wife. And that goes for the justices. And I think it was Justice Alito's family had put the American flag upside down, which is they said, well, it was just a mistake. Well, those things aren't mistakes, and it shouldn't be mistakes.
My ass.
Right. well, and they also flew. What was the other flag that they flew? That was,
little white supremacist
First Amendment rights, but. Again, it's a terrible look and not cool when you're
like Nazi vibes, something of that nature.
And it raises a serious question. One is the Supreme Court, as well as lawyers, should be held to a very high standard and a higher standard than other people, and that because you trade really on your reputation. And as a trial lawyer, if you went into court and the court knew you and you'd been there before and they knew you wouldn't lie to them and you wouldn't exaggerate, they would trust what you say almost point blank. And if you lost that trust, you don't get it back. And that's what,
Right.
in my view, that's what this Supreme Court has done. But I think it raises so I think there needs to be very strong ethical guidelines set up
Reform.
for the court. And if they won't do it themselves, Congress should do it. And go ahead.
This gerrymandering situation is interesting because Tina and I were talking before we logged on that, gerrymandering is not a new thing. They've been doing that for decades. But it seems like at this point, somehow the system is managing to support gerrymandering for the right while depressing it on the left.
Well, I'm very much opposed to anybody doing it. I don't blame California for what they've done. Texas was doing it, and it shows a complete lack of trust in the democracy that was set up 250 years ago. And
Right.
it demonstrates what's wrong with the system, and we can talk later about systemic problems. But I think leaving it on the Supreme Court at the moment, I think that there's serious questions of whether or not there should be age limits for the Supreme Court, whether there should be a
Absolutely.
term limit on the Supreme Court, whether or not the Supreme Court should be expanded. Now, I say that again long before my time. There was a threatened Roosevelt hacking of the Supreme Court in the 1930s because the court kept knocking down some of his efforts to get us out of the Depression or try to get us out of the Depression. And that went over like a lead balloon. But if you take a look, there are 9 justices have been there. I mean, the number has been 9 for ages. The population has expanded exponentially. And we have 11 circuit courts, which are the appellate courts that oversee the district court. So, for example, the Third Circuit Court of Appeals oversees, I think it's Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. I think that's the Third Circuit. First Circuit is probably New York and most of New England. And that circuit number has increased from when I first started the practice. I think there were 9 circuits, and now I think that there are 11. So, pure pragmatically, it seems to me, we should have a larger court to reflect the larger population. And in fact, I think they should reflect the variety of interests that exist in this country. So that, to me, it's a starting point if all we were doing was focusing on the Supreme Court. But I think some of these issues go beyond even the Supreme Court. You haven't asked yet, and I can get into one of my diatribes. But for example, I think Congress should have very, very strict ethical guidelines. I think anybody once they're elected or once they take office, all their financial assets or investments should be put in a blind trust run by a certified financial planner.
Right.
We are seeing stealing on an alarming basis and across the country by
absolutely on both sides of the aisle, right?
Yeah, and I think it's true on both sides of the aisle, and I think it's time for the people to stand up so that say we don't want stock trading. We don't. I think the Senate just passed a bill that said they're not going to get paid if the government's been shut down. I think that should be true for all Congress. They
Absolutely.
They've got a job to do. If they're not going to do it, don't get paid.
Because you guys can't get along and do, literally, you can't sit at my lunch table.
Well, that's come about for a lot of reasons. Congress used to have to be, these guys used to have to share rooms and share how, split the cost of the house. So they might not get along on the floor of the House or the Senate, but they get along afterwards and go to have dinner and talk things out. So I think that they shouldn't get paid, and I think they should have the same opportunities for health care that we do. I don't think there should be any separate benefit because it separates you from the people. And the day before they're elected and the day after elected, they're the same person. They're no smarter and no better than any of the rest of them.
Absolutely. And, now, a lot of the decisions they make is because they're desperate to stay in office because there's a very strong incentive to be there.
Well, that's right. And I think it's after a limited period of time, you get your salary forever.
Yeah. Not to mention, I assume they get health care forever, too. That's a big deal.
It is.
I don't know. I'd have to look that up for sure. But
yeah, benefits that the rest of us don't get.
Yeah. And so as long as they're incentivized to prioritize their reelection over anything else, then what do we expect? That's what they're going to do.
Yes. And I think that raises a host of other questions. For example, as I've thought about this, I think that whenever a president's elected, I think the first thing is that there should be a requirement whoever gets put into the cabinet should have at least a minimum of some number of years of experience in that type of position. For example, whatever her name is, McMahon, running the Department of Education.
Oh my God.
She's a disaster, and she doesn't know anything about education. So I think there should be a minimum requirement. I think that there should be a bipartisan committee appointed with respect to each cabinet position that will report back on the status of that, like the Department of Education, Department of Health, what can be done better, what needs to be improved. Do we need less people? Do we need more people? How to be efficient? And that bipartisan commission should make a report to the president. And I think that if they won't do it, we, the people, should demand that they do that or something like it.
Right. Which normally would be done through our representatives, but.
Yeah. And we need to figure out a way that this can't happen again.
Absolutely.
So go ahead.
It's just so much. It's so much. It's so many things happening all direction. At once and I know that it's by design, but when it says we need to do something, I need concrete examples here. Is this pitchforks? Is this because initiative petitions? Is this, I try to tell people to vote for people that are going to actually represent them, but they don't listen to that. So I don't know.
Hey, Tina, can you tell us about the thing that happened recently here in Missouri with our...
So Missouri's doing a lot of this gerrymander, child drawing on the map. And so we've been a 6-2 state, but Donald Trump actually tweeted to our governor that he needed another seat. So our governor called a mid-decade redistrict and drew one more seat for the Republicans and pushed it through the legislature. And so now, of course, the Supreme Court of Missouri just looked at the case, and we have an initiative petition process that we can do here that they're also putting on the ballot to try to take away in November. But we got over 300,000 signatures for this petition, and our Secretary of State will not verify the signatures. So now the court case was at the Supreme Court to decide which map is standing for the August election, because they're coming up and
August is not that far away.
Right. And they need to get those ballots ready and know who's in what district. And so it was so weird the way that our Supreme Court worded it. They're like, the map stands, but they said the map stands because the Secretary of State has not verified signatures, but he just won't do it.
Well, I think, it's a very, when I say an interesting problem, it's do you guys listen to the Midas Touch, Ben Marcella?
Mm-hmm.
Not that he would listen to me, but I don't know him, but I sent an email the other day. I think that we need somebody to form a group that is going to come up with a plan for all these changes. And
yes.
I think that if people organize, that voice will be heard. So that, I mean, in New York recently, there's the wonderful story about ICE showed up at some place to take 4 foreign workers out of a workplace. Apparently there's an emergency phone number. Citizens showed up demanding to see their papers, demanding to see the warrant, of which they had none, and taking pictures of all of it. And it went on and on. Eventually, ICE left and the workers went back to work. And we've seen that in a number of places of people standing up for just simply what's right. And I think whether it's a guy, whether it's a Josh Shapiro or a Pritzker of Illinois, I mean, I happen to like those guys, or Bashir in Kentucky. I think somebody needs to take the lead and come out and say, these things aren't right, and here are things we're going to do to fix it.
Right.
Because I don't trust, even if the midterms come about, that the Democrats take control of the House and there's some hope in the Senate, that then this is going to become business as normal at some other. And it shouldn't.
No, we are not. We're not moving on.
Yeah, and I think that I posted the other day, this is in one of my rants, if you will, that if you really
love them, they make me laugh, so I love them.
Well, that's nice. I'm
just as mad as you are, and I love your presentation with it. I'm like,
well,
yeah, Ed, get him.
Thank you. But the our founding document's really not the Constitution, it's our Declaration of Independence. And the Declaration of Independence is all, well, it doesn't say all men, and we'll come back to this. It doesn't say all people, it says all men are created equal. But if you go down, it talks about the king was being opposed because he was putting troops in the street. They were taking things away. They weren't letting immigrants come into the colonies and become naturalized citizens. I mean, you can go down through the list of, if you will, the Bill of Particulars in the Declaration of Independence and see where that's being violated. So it's time to stand up and find the person or people. And I think that what I'd sent a memo to one of our representatives, I was out not in his district, and said, I think that if I were there, I'd form groups on different topics. The Supreme Court, for example, tariffs,
committees,
essentially committees, and so that you wouldn't have Pritzker worrying about a host of different things. He might worry about ICE and immigration enforcement, border control, which is, by the way, the guy in charge of border control just left because he'd been going on sex vacations around the world and paying prostitutes. This is who we've got running our government.
The best people, the holiest people.
Yeah. And I mean, at every turn, we have a caricature of who should be, in charge, from RFK Jr. to Linda McMahon.
We elected a reality TV show host. What did we expect?
Yeah, and did you see Doug Burgum the other day say that 40% of the energy in North Dakota is through wind and solar. Wind, I think, is 35%, and solar is 5%. So that's 40% from renewable energy. And he said he's shutting down these projects around the rest of the country because his quote was, well, when the sun doesn't shine, it doesn't produce energy.
We don't get any energy.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's about as stupid as you can get.
Poor guy has never heard of a battery.
Yeah. And this is just, it's a theater of the absurd. But I think that somebody should be, I think a group should be forming groups on each one of these topics so that nobody is having to fight 400.
It's too much.
And I think the states are at fault on this too, but just
absolutely.
Because I think that we have rights under state constitution, and I think that the states should be front and center suing the federal government, saying you're not going to take our rights away from our citizens.
And then you have Missouri that is like, oh no, please stop on us with the boot. We love the boot. Right. We love boots. We love them. Come on.
But it's a good example. What I would do, whether it can be done, I don't know. But if so, for example, FEMA provides disaster relief in Missouri, but not in California, and not in the states that voted Republican. If I were those states, I would create a state bank and say, deposit your federal income taxes here, and we will indemnify you for any claims that you didn't pay your IRS taxes, but we're going to take not only state taxes, we will distribute the proportionate share of your federal income tax. And if Missouri can't pay for it, if California's got to pay for its own disaster relief, let Alabama, let Missouri, let Florida.
Yeah.
Because if that's the way it's going to be, I'd fight back with fire and fire. And
well, at that point, we're taking the United out of United States.
Well, if you go back, there was a Russian general wrote a paper years ago, and I think it's probably at least 10, that he thought the United States would divide into 4 parts, essentially northeast, northwest, southeast, southwest. And I'm sure that they're involved in doing exactly that, but I think that the answer is somebody needs to demonstrate to all these states that we're in it together. And if you don't want to be in together, that's fine.
Right.
Well,
if California, New York, and Illinois stop contributing federally, I mean, they're going to find out real quick how much they miss them.
Well, I think that's right. And I think that those are types of things that need to be done. I think that there should be a requirement that congressmen meet with their constituents.
Won't come around. We have to go outside their office. We were out there today because our Secretary of State. Yeah, they're like, oh my God, my constituents are here. Help me.
On the sidewalk out front.
Yeah, I think they should be required to meet with constituents.
Yes.
And if you don't meet with constituents, you don't get paid for the month.
Yeah. Well, all these are great ideas. They really are. It's just we got to get ourselves out of this mess first before anything can be implemented. Do you have any thoughts on that other than vote in the midterms?
No, I mean, I think so. There's a lady, Katie Phang, Phang, who was sued in the District Court of Columbia to get the Epstein files under the statute that was passed. I think that's the type of thing that needs to be done. There's litigation down in Florida to try and stop the Trump litigation against the IRS for $10 billion.
Oh, yeah, we need to talk about that. What a grift that is.
Well, and he said the judge down there, Judge Williams, who apparently is a very well thought of judge, has said, I want to know how it is that the executive branch can be suing another part of the executive branch. And I think those briefs were due in court today. And meanwhile, it was announced that Trump and the IRS were going to reach an agreement that $1.7 billion will be put into a special fund that would have a board of directors that distribute where the money goes without any oversight of where it went, who brought it, and to try and get around Judge Williams. But I think the states, it'd be nice for me to say I could do that. And I don't know, there's a legal term called standing. What right do you have to be in court? But I think the states, the state attorney generals ought to be leading the fight. Say, our people pay taxes. We need to know where it's going. And this is coming out of the federal coffers. And, that type of thing, I think the current state attorney generals ought to be stepping up to the plate.
Yeah. Yeah, that issue specifically makes me absolutely furious. Because it's just grifting on the front. They're not even trying to cover it up or pretend it's legitimate anymore. It's like the type of thing you'd read about that's happening in Russia.
Well, it is, and it's and his kids are front and center. Kids in inland,
absolutely,
front and center.
Gaza, God.
That SOB is not going to live long enough from natural causes. I'm sure. I'm not saying that. You know what I mean? He's nothing nefarious, but he's not going to live long enough to see proper justice. But damn it, his kids might. I hope they meet their justice someday.
Well, he might not, but I think that what everybody's hoping is that the midterms will turn around and put the Democrats in charge and they'll start investigations. But what you've seen is when people have started litigation against them or stood up in litigation, as ABC is now doing to Carr on the FCC, that they're going to have to back down because the administration and Trump and the family will not be able to withstand what's called discovery. And they won't
Yep.
testify. They won't be there to testify under oath. So if you stand up to them, and that's why I say, I think, to me,
Yep.
the answer is for states to be filing litigation against them.
Well, we could argue that the IRS should have been able to do the same thing, but it's like one hand suing the other and they both run off with the money.
Oh, that's exactly right.
Money.
Our money.
That's exactly right. And I think that the people that I think have the ability to do that are the state courts. Now, the states also have the ability, for example, on the Trump phone, which has been front and center lately, where they take $100 from 600,000 people and aren't going to return it and aren't going to give them a phone. I think the states have the right to file a class action for get their citizens the $100 back under fraud. I think that they have rights on a lot of these to find out where our tax dollars are going, and they need to step up and do it. They might argue, I've done this long enough. I believe that where there's a wrong, there's a way to get it righted, and the courts will help you find that way if they can. So that if you file the lawsuit and have a colorable basis for it, all you needed to do is set it survive long enough to start the discovery process. And
yeah, that's a good point. What was the thing that was in the news recently about? So someone was challenging the fact that, what was it, that certain positions had to be members of the bar to be legit. Gosh, we may have to cut this out, Tina, because I don't know what I'm talking about. but basically, it was undercutting the bar.
Well, no, that's what the Department of Justice has sued the District of Columbia Bar Association to say they're not allowed to investigate anybody in the Trump administration. Now, they could not, the Bar Association couldn't investigate you, for example, if you've done something wrong. But I think that Alina Habit, I think was, or Haba, whatever her name was.
Mm-hmm. Where'd she go?
I don't know. She's disappeared, but I think she had Bar Association complaints against her. I think Janine Perot in D.C. has Bar Association.
Drinking.
Yeah. And
allegedly.
Yeah, along with Hegseth and...
My God, he's so scary.
Well, they just pulled back 4,000 troops from Poland, and that were supposed to go to Poland today or tomorrow, and they pulled them back, and they're withdrawing 5,000 troops from Germany. If you look around the world, we've lost our standing.
Oh, 100%.
So but I don't think there's any way in the world that the court in D.C. is going to say, we're not going to allow you to investigate lawyers who are admitted in the bar in the District of Columbia or practice in the court. I had a case years ago in Ohio where they brought in a lawyer. The plaintiffs brought in a lawyer from somewhere, to say Kansas, but I don't remember where. But I looked at, he'd been disciplined by the Bar Association. And as defense counsel, I objected. I said, you shouldn't be admitting a lawyer, in Ohio who's had ethical complaints against them from another state. And the court agreed.
Yeah. Now we got Rudy Giuliani and shit.
Yeah. Well, it's all the same. It all comes back down to just absolutely rejecting our standards, rejecting our norms.
Well, but that's why I think what you guys do, and I hope what I do, is motivating people to show up to do something. Because I think if people show up and do something, there's strength in numbers.
And there's way more of us than there are of them.
That's right. That's right. And there's some question now that whether or not the redistricting in Texas is actually going to create more Democrats than Republicans.
We've talked about
Karma
that.
sucks. Karma
Yeah.
sucks.
Yeah, that's
Well, yeah,
but
yeah,
if it's true that if it's true that more people agree with our position or appalled by Trump, then this type of
it
thing would
won't
not
matter.
come. Well, but it might matter because if Texas doesn't get those 4 seats, it sends a very clear message to what this country thinks. So
Right.
that and as people, as just as citizens, that's sort of other than voting. You show up and you protest. You show up at your representative's office and you show up in numbers. You go to, as you guys did, your representative's office and say, "We want a meeting," and you hope
Yeah.
it goes on the news that he won't meet. He won't talk to the people he allegedly represents.
Oh, Ed, I'm annoying.
Really?
Yeah, no. Oh God, yeah. Well, and that's funny because I was listening to a thing the other day, and the girl that was talking about assimilation versus revolt. And it was discussing like throughout history when things like this have happened around the world in different places, like what was the deciding factor if the society and citizens went along with what was going on, or if they got their pitchforks, like with the, World War II, the Holocaust and the Nazis and all that stuff. And um, they were saying that the deciding factor was the psyche of the society at the time from propaganda or whatever was going on at the time. Like, were they able to come together and revolt? And looking at what the past 60 years have been from other countries using like psychological warfare and like propaganda to literally divide and conquer our country.
Well, and that's why uh, that's why you get people protesting, white people and other people protesting what they're trying to do against black people and minorities. Because I'm not a black person, I'm not a minority. Well, in some ways, but and why you get men protesting against the Dobbs decision, because you recognize it affecting other people's lives, and the
Yeah.
issue is important enough for you to stand up and say something.
Yeah. I think one of the things that's disappointed me the most in the last, 10 years is that there's some people that just aren't capable of giving a shit until it affects them. Period.
Yes, although you have to keep in mind, if you go back to our history in the 1930s, I think one of the things that Roosevelt is really not given credit for is I think he stopped another civil war in this country because he gave whether you agreed with him or disagreed with him, and Republicans were calling him a dictator and all that sort of stuff, but he gave people hope. He showed he was a leader in a lot of ways. In some ways, in my view, he wasn't, but that he was showing people he was trying, and because otherwise there was massive despair as well as economic disaster in the country. And
Yeah.
if our leaders won't do it, uh, then we have to do it for ourselves.
Yep.
So that I don't know, as I say, I don't know what to suggest. I send memos, which probably go into the round waste paper basket to representatives. One of my state senators is John Fetterman, who I think is a disgrace. And
Yes.
100%.
What a disappointment. What a
So,
disappointment he was.
are we thinking it's like an illness issue, or is he being blackmailed, or what the heck is up
well,
with him?
I think maybe it started with a stroke, but I think he loves being on Fox News. He loves the attention he gets, and he doesn't realize that as soon as he's going to be in a different position, Fox News isn't going to give a good goddamn
Oh
what
yeah,
he says or what
that's
he thinks. And he thinks
that's
he's
pitiful.
some man that brings peace to troubled waters. Um, but
As if,
but what they're doing is taking away hope, and they're
mm,
pandering to the worst of the American people.
indeed. I think one thing that is giving people hope right now, is what's going on in New York with Mondani. You know, he's the if you guys haven't, for folks at home, if you haven't been noticing this, so he's only been in office since January, and they just balanced their budget in New York, and they did it without cutting services in any major way. Basically, what they did is they've instilled a tax on people who have like second homes, so a home that they're not living in regularly, and these are people that are multimillionaire, billionaires, and they've raised like $500 million by taxing these folks, and it's made a huge difference. And then of course they've cut waste and done other things, but you know, here's a guy everybody's like accusing of being a total socialist. It's going to ruin the city, you know, and look what he's doing. They've got some subsidized child care now. They're really doing good things. It's like what a government should be for the people.
And I think that, now I don't know if he's like Mandami or not, but certainly San Francisco mayor is given a lot of credit for turning that city around, and they has a popularity rating or approval rating something like 75%. And I understand the Mandami type of person is leading in the race for Los Angeles mayor.
Well, and hopefully this will work against the propaganda. You know, if people just take a minute and look and see what the truth is here about what they do stand for without the negative propaganda, what the results they're getting, and just look at it for what it is, maybe they'll be more open to people with similar views in other parts of the country that you wouldn't think that would succeed. One can hope.
Well, one can hope. I think that who was it, James Carville or Bill Clinton said, it's the economy, stupid, is what people tend to vote on. And so you take a look.
It hasn't been this bad in a long time.
No, and Alaska's talking about the good chance of getting a Democratic senator. Maine, I think North Dakota now might be in play, or South Dakota. But it depends what news they get.
Yeah. Well, and I worry, frankly, you know, foil hat coming out, I worry that they can always mess with the election, because I feel like they've done it before, and I hope that we have a fair election. Let's just put it that way.
It's worrisome.
I don't feel, Lisa, like that's even tinfoil hat. Like Elon Musk was tweeting, "You would not have won the election without me," and tagging Donald Trump because they were fighting. So
maybe Donald Trump and the powers that be don't have the resources to do that anymore. Maybe they've pissed off enough people that they can't get it done. I don't know.
Well, of course, it was a big thing when Musk poured all that money into Wisconsin and a Democrat won the chief position there. But I think that's something else that needs to be changed. Hawaii just passed a statute that their corporations are not allowed to give money. And corporations are brought up to state law. So if every state did that, that would be one thing. But I toy with the idea of, myself, I toy with the idea of whether or not a state should pass a law that money from out of state cannot come in any way to influence or relate to a local election. I mean, why?
Can you expand on the Hawaii situation?
Of which, the Hawaii situation? Yeah. Well, so every corporation is, if you go back to Citizens United, what they really said is corporations essentially are people, and they have those rights. And if that needs to change, then Congress needs to change. I don't remember if they said there need to be a constitutional amendment change, but it's clear that big money is clearly impacting all of our elections. Corporations are incorporated under the laws of the state, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, Virginia, Delaware, whatever. But if the state passed a law that said any corporation incorporated in this state cannot engage in political spending, period, then they wouldn't have the right, because it's a creation of the state and it has to abide by the laws of the state. so that for example, the Securities and Exchange Commission is talking about removing the requirement for quarterly financial statements by businesses on the New York Stock Exchange. I think that's a terrible decision because people need that information every 3 months. I suppose there might be some rationale for it, but but in any event, a state, I think, could perfectly say that to be incorporated in the state, you have to publicly disclose your financial condition every 3 months. So if the federal government doesn't do it, the state could do it. It's a requirement in order to get a license in the state. So I think it would stop the corporations. But the other question is why should I give money? Why should I be allowed to give money to somebody running for a district in Texas or California? That's not, except for the fact that excluding a limited number of people might be a relative or a friend or something like that. And my contributions are limited to, I don't know, $3,500, something like that, on
Right.
federal elections. So why should somebody be allowed to get around that and buy ads, supply airplanes, et cetera? And why should Texans be allowed to influence an election in Pennsylvania?
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody would agree with that, but I think about that is why should they?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good question.
It should be up to the people of the state who they elect, not somebody else.
Right.
And if I live in Missouri
Well,
and
Missouri is always trying to make laws about that, but they never pass. I don't know.
well,
I don't
that's a good
know.
one. I think somebody needs to take that banner, and
Yeah.
people need to show up at the legislative sessions and say, "This is something we want. This is something
Right.
we demand. We don't want." Elon Musk is an easy target. We
Right.
don't want Elon Musk deciding who's going to run the state. So that why should he be allowed? I I assume that there are limits on what I could contribute to a state candidate as well as federal candidates. I've only run up against it on the federal basis. Um, but why should he be allowed to do that in what's called dark money or other money? Um, but I think if it's a good idea, the people need to stand up and say this needs to stop and show up at the legislature, go to the Senate, go to the House. I'd
Oh,
like
I
to
I
ask.
love to show up. I love to show up and
I
just stare
get
at
it.
them. No, I
But
do. We were just there the other day. It was great. We're just like
But I
see.
think people need to. I'd love to show up at a meeting with John Fetterman and say to him, John, have you ever read the Pennsylvania Constitution? It doesn't talk about citizens of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. It talks about people, residents. So
Right.
that those are the rights that are being protected. Is anybody who lives in the Commonwealth? Have you read it? What does it mean to you? Have you read the federal Constitution, much less the state? You
Yeah, I don't think they have. Like,
I'm
I
sure
think
I'm
that
sure
we
they have.
should have, like, maybe some more rules or, like, maybe like a government 101 class before you go to the Hill, you know? Like, here's the three branches. You can't sue, if you're in the executive branch, you can't sue yourself in there, okay?
Well, no, I think as I say, I think these things are axiomatic. That it's only Trump and all these crooks. I mean, I don't think there's any one of them in there that I hold any respect for. Um, can you imagine going to China and talk about the number of Chinese restaurants in the United States? I mean, that's a really bad
That's so
thing.
embarrassing.
I mean,
Oh my God.
and I think my sense of Chairman Xi is that we don't agree politically, but he's a smart guy and he reads
Oh,
philosophy.
they're
He understands
patient.
history. Yeah, but they
Yes.
understand all this stuff. They read. Trump doesn't even read. All he does is watch Fox News and fall asleep.
Doesn't read. I know. Didn't they used to, like, draw?
Well, he said on the most recent question on Iran's response to opening the Straits of Hormuz and ending the war, he said, "If I don't like the first sentence, I don't read anymore." He said that.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, he also was asked, "Are you concerned, or how are you feeling about the strain on the American people's, checkbook?" He's like, "I'm not concerned about that." Like
Do
in
we
an
need any more proof that he could not care less about the American people and he's there to enrich himself, his family, and his friends to the point that they can do something for him in return? I don't understand how anybody else can see it any other way. Like, how obvious does it have to be? How how much do we have to get grifted before enough people figure it out to straighten this shit out before it's completely ruined
all
beyond
the
all recognition?
assets. Got to strip all them
Let,
assets.
God
let,
dang it.
let's stop there for a second because, I mean, there are any number of things that you could talk about in this regard that are stopping of aid throughout Africa. Now, I understand everybody says, well, we shouldn't give anybody anything. It's America first. But what we're doing is giving Africa to China. China is already spread throughout Africa. They owned all sorts of mineral rights throughout Africa. And as we take away the funding for AIDS or HIV prevention, as we take away the funding for food throughout Africa, our status goes down. I mean, the way we're looked at. And China's providing that now. China is providing oil and gas and fuel to other countries. So and we're not. So it's
It's
destroying
losing
us.
our soft power, right? Soft power is what
It
it's
doesn't
called,
exist
right?
anymore. But the question is, how do you get people to understand that? And how do you talk about it? Because I think at the end of the day, it seems to me the farmers of both forums care about one thing, and that's the cost of diesel fuel and fertilizer, because that's making
Well,
them fall into bankruptcy.
but okay, so maybe they'll get it now that we took away all of that aid. So in their mind, the aid should be coming back to them, but they're finding out the aid is not coming to them. So they're not getting more because other people are getting less. I mean, well, I guess we are getting less while, the
Everybody
powers
else is
that be are
getting.
getting more. But, you know, learning by like learning through consequences. I
Well, it seems to me one of the questions is, and how do you take what you guys do, for example, where you talk about this and make sure it gets to a broad section of people?
Yeah.
And that's because I mean, I can be wrong on any number of things, although I rarely admit it. Um, the, but and I don't mind being wrong, if I'm factually inaccurate or don't understand something. But you take a look at CBS, for example. They're destroying their position in the world. They used to be one of the obviously prime, news outlets. Not anymore. Barry Weiss has destroyed that. And she's a Pittsburgher, I hate to say. And they're taking away that credibility. I was thinking about this the other day, somebody very kindly on TikTok sent me a comment. I think it was a lady said, "I very much enjoy watching your TikTok. Folks remind me very much of Walter Cronkite." And I don't think I could have gotten a better compliment.
Huh.
Right.
And but we're
Well,
missing that. We're missing that in a broad swath of an intellectual discussion of what's right and what's wrong. And, you can go on. I think, for example, the states should have demanded, uh, hearings on, if they do it, I don't know if this is done on a state level, on what's the impact on each state of getting rid of people who are in this country, that are not fully documented.
right,
Forget legal or illegal or anything else.
right.
What's
Just
the
the
impact?
economic engine of it.
What
Yeah.
what is not only the economic impact, but a lot of these people work in home health care. They work in nursing
Mm-hmm.
homes, which I've had
Yeah.
my mother in a nursing home. I wouldn't want to work there. I don't like,
Yeah.
it's not a fun job,
It's a
and
hard job.
that's right, and they do it
Yeah.
without complaint, to best of my knowledge, and very low pay. So what's the impact on it?
Right.
What's the
Oh,
impact on the
exactly.
state? What's the impact on the state when you have a nutcase like RFK Jr.? I think the state ought to be, instead of just complaining about it, I think they ought to be holding hearings across each state and say how many people in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania are working on our farm that are undocumented, and what's going to happen to that farm work if they're gone. I have no problem with having people have a criminal record or a major criminal record, put it that way.
But that's not who. That's
I don't think anybody does.
No one does. It's just like the gun fight. It's like, I totally am fine with guns. Maybe like do a little background check, or like don't give it to somebody with like domestic violence, but like, and maybe you don't need a machine gun, but you know, like, I want you to have guns, babe. I do. Just like not, you know, just like maybe some small regulations. Maybe you can't sell them at a garage sale. Maybe.
Lisa, did you have operations today? I'm switching.
I did.
How many did you have?
I think I wound up with 5.
You know, so the question is that I switched to that, not quite out of the blue, but hundreds of thousands of people are being thrown off their insurance because they can't afford it, and nobody is really working to solve the healthcare problem. Rising prices, healthcare.
The whole system's a mess.
Health systems across the country, hospitals are closing, healthcare centers are closing. Who is, you know, and this is happening more in the rural states than they are in the major cities. You know, who is talking about that? And they, instead of having it there as a sort of an add-on to something else you're complaining about, these ought to be an independent discussion that's coming.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. The frustrating thing is, you know, I've worked out in the rural space too, which has a lot of pros. You know, it's a wonderful place to be. The problem we have, amongst many, is that, again, people have been bamboozled to vote against their own best interests. So, you know, you can have people voting for someone, their representative, that absolutely does not go to bat for them when it comes to those issues and getting money for their local facilities and, you know, at a national level.
Expanding Medicaid.
Yeah, and so there's so many problems. I mean, we don't want to hijack the talk, but like Medicaid is such a terrible reimburser, right? That some people lose money taking Medicaid because it doesn't cover the basic costs. So, but it's better than nothing. And if you get out in the rural space, like in the rural space, what we call the payer mix, or like, you know, there's a high percentage of people that have poorly reimbursing or self-funded insurance. And so they're at a significant disadvantage versus an area that has a lot of like good insurance that reimburses well. So again, it's just like anything else. It's a disparity. And, you know, what's better for one area can be horrific for another. So, and that's an issue that we're going to have. It's going to take a generation to sort it out. And we don't even know where to start. We're all just trying to survive.
I think that's true with a lot of people. But you all watch Margaret Hoover on Friday. Here she's on Friday nights on public television.
I do not.
Well, you ought to. She's very good. And she has some of the shows I'm not too interested in, but she is President Hoover's great-granddaughter. And she's one of the heads of the Hoover Institute out in California. But she does, what's the show, Firing Line. And she had on a couple of weeks ago a guy who works out of the Hoover Institute who thinks nothing, you know, his expertise is on healthcare. And he pointed out, you know, that the system started out with Medicare and the healthcare system with insurance, and it's just sort of been bastardized over the years. You know, people put Band-Aids on it, people tried to do it. So it's not the system you would put together today if you were trying to create a healthcare system with rational costs for people and good coverage. And so it's not he said the answer in his view is not universal health care. There's a place for insurance. There's a place for Medicare and Medicaid. And I mean, very impressive to listen to. And I don't know enough about it, but I think that this is the type of thing that I think that people are dying to hear. And I think that the news programs should have a responsibility, or at least they used to, have people on it to talk about these things, of how complicated they are.
Yeah.
What's
so
good
complicated.
And it's like tariffs. Anybody in their right mind who thought tariffs were a economic boon to the country, I mean, you got to have your head in it. I don't even know why, quite frankly, I don't even know why a trade deficit's bad. It generally means we're bringing in lower cost goods into this country that is good for the consumer.
Yeah. That's the thing, is that every issue we bring up and talk about, it's complex, and there's nuances, and there's pros and cons, and even the experts in each field there would be topics that they would argue about, just like anything. But we've got to have some well-meaning, ethical, moral people that aren't in it just for themselves to be in charge of these things, to have the public's best interests in mind. And right now, our pendulum has swung so far the other way. It's hard to imagine how wonderful that could be.
Well, the problem is everybody thinks when they have an idea that they've got the public's best interest in mind.
Yeah.
And so but there was a time at least and you can remember, who was it that Reagan would joke with? They would fight like heck over legislation. He was from, I can see him. I can't remember his name, up in Massachusetts, I think. But they would have dinner together, and they could joke. They could have drinks together.
Right,
they would go
right.
to functions together and be friends. That doesn't seem to exist.
No, it's like hatred. We've othered the other so much.
That's by design. We've been put in this position by design.
Well, but that's why I say I think that the first thing that should happen when a new president's elected is a 90 or 120-day period where parties, bipartisan people have to get together to make recommendations. It has to be a bipartisan group.
Right.
Yeah.
If they're not going to do it on their own, we ought to force them into it.
Absolutely.
But again, I think that it'd be nice to find somebody to say I think they're generally Sunday morning programs. My guess is local programs on every station that talk about something of public interest. It might be local, local statuary or, the local parks or something. But I think that they should be enticed to have programs on these topics and get different views. I think
we need to be talking all of the time, and everyone needs to realize that they have to be a part of the conversation if they want anything to get better, and that it has to be us, because they're not going to fire themselves, and they're not planning on leaving without a fight, even if
But again, I think the states ought to. The states, if you go back to the Dodd's decision, Dodd said that there's nothing in the Constitution about abortion rights, so it's a state's issue. Well, there's nothing in the Constitution about artificial intelligence or social media
or the
internet. So I think that the states have the same. They have obligations to protect our health, safety, and welfare. That's a part of it. So I think under that clause of the state constitution, the state should decide if they're going to allow social media and under what circumstances. So nobody's going to convince me that if you didn't say to Facebook and the rest of the outlets, you need to put up a little thing, fact checking can't be verified, or this is AI. Just put it on. That they would be forced to do it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So I think the states, they come back to this, I think the states have a lot of rights that they're simply not exercising. course, they haven't asked me.
Well, I know you're calling and telling them. Okay, I know you are, because I am
No,
too.
nobody's listening. Let's put it that way.
All the people in the, While We Still Can universe are listening, Ed.
Well, thanks.
They're listening.
But that's why I get back to the Declaration of Independence. If you look at the complaints of the Declaration of Independence, and go take a look at it this evening, there's a long list. If you get past all men are created equal and inalienable rights, look at what the king was doing wrong that they complained about. And it was, we're seeing a lot of that now.
That sounds like a good TikTok series to make.
Yes.
Well,
There you go. Weekend activity.
Well, I take some kind, I don't know, I take probably unwarranted credit. I was watching somebody on Facebook or TikTok or Substack or something, but I talked about the Declaration of Independence, and suddenly somebody was talking about it and pointing out the same thing.
Always.
So I'd like to think that I had some input,
Yeah.
but probably not.
Speaking of that, of social media, can you tell our listeners where we can find you on TikTok or other socials?
On TikTok, it's Tiger, and the only reason it's not my own name, somebody said to me early on, don't use your own name on TikTok. I'm on Facebook under my own name, Ed Schmidt. I think that's also under, if whatever goes on TikTok, or no, whatever goes on Facebook, I think also goes on Instagram. And then there's a YouTube channel of Ed Schmidt, but it's all the same stuff. And as I told you last time, I don't have a clue how to get on sub. So if I ever come down to Missouri, you'll get me on it. But
Okay, we'll help you. We'll get you all hooked up.
Yeah. I think you can YouTube that, but
you were beyond my comprehension. I tried to, I posted today that I think the post is called, it's not Epstein, but we're getting raped.
Yes.
Because I did not want to equate what's going on to what those young ladies went through. I posted the same thing, but I decided it was unfair to those women to equate it. So, but it took me 45 minutes.
I appreciate you saying that.
Well, it took me 45 minutes to find out how to delete it from TikTok.
No.
You're like, oh, delete.
And as I told people this time next week, I'm going to have my own chickens.
Abort.
Don't say what?
Yes. No, she said abort. I was like, Dobbs already ruined that. Okay, so you're getting chickens, though.
Yes, I'm working on grooming them. I'm going to have two
so
chickens.
Much fun.
And I'm told I will get a dozen eggs a week or so, which is probably, he says the doctor, you'd probably tell me that's no good for my cholesterol, but
I think eggs are great.
It should be a lot of fun. So,
I have a lot of chicken stories, Ed, but that's for another episode, okay?
Someday you can tell him about the massacre.
Oh, God, no.
It would be very interesting to see how my lab responds to the chicken, but she's sort of a coward. So
she'll probably make friends.
We hope.
Them.
Yeah, my dog doesn't give a crap.
All right, well, everybody, let's thank Ed Schmidt for being back with us. We appreciate your view and your wise words, and thank you so much.
Well, listen, it's nice to be with you guys. It's nice to see you again. I appreciate it. I'll ask you one thing. Is I have not seen, I don't remember the lady's name now who was extradited to Brazil. Has she testified somewhere or come out with more information?
I think it's an ongoing process. I think she backed off for a while because things were extremely overwhelming, as you can imagine. And I think now maybe they're back in the process of releasing some new information. But yeah, our buddy Tony is a really good source for that.
And what did you think of the lady's testimony the other day on the Hill? Did you hear some of that?
The Epstein one?
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
I mean, it was devastating, it's.
Yeah, I think that if you weren't emotionally tuned into that and realized the damage has been to them by the disclosures by the DOJ, there's something wrong with you. And you just sit there and wonder, would you what I ask people that I know are Trump, would you ever have him to dinner and would you let him alone with your daughter?
No, God.
Yeah.
That's what I try to ask him too. I'm like, you want someone to be the president of the United States that should not be allowed in the perimeter of a school? Like, come on. This is
Yeah.
and honestly, I probably wouldn't leave my daughter with any man, but that I didn't know. But like, that's also a problem too that we don't need to get into this one. But I would actually, Ed, you know what? I'd leave him. You're a good grandpa. I'd let her, But seriously, like it.
It's
If you can't feel it oozing off, I'm concerned about you.
Yeah, I think that's right. I've met, I guess, 3 presidents, and I like, even Richard Nixon. I mean, he was, no matter what else, at least to me, he was pleasant, and I liked both Bushes a lot. I thought they were stand-up people, so that they were trying to do what's right. Whether they did or not, history will decide. But you couldn't get me to it. I was thinking about this the other day. If somebody said, would you have dinner with Trump? My answer would be no.
God, no.
Absolutely not. But I think some of my personality characteristics, I don't even like to talk to people I don't like, let alone I would never make it in politics because I can't pretend that I like people I don't.
I was elected at one time to our local council, and it's an eye-opening experience. But you realize you're representing all the people. So
Yeah,
people I didn't
exactly.
necessarily like or didn't necessarily agree with, but they had a
Yeah,
point of view that you need to listen to. You
absolutely.
represent them.
Yeah.
Well, listen,
That's
Yeah.
true.
thanks a million. It's been, as always, a pleasure talking to you guys.
Likewise.
I don't know what we've solved, but I do think the answer is we the people.
Absolutely. I love that.
Okay.
We'll have you on again when our Supreme Court pisses us off in probably a week.
See you next week.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right.
Bye.
Everybody
Good
at
luck
home,
with
take care. Thanks for
Bye.
listening. Talk to you soon.
Good luck with your chickens. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.